Before we get started, we just wanted to say thank you to Old Republic Surety for sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety, as well as NASBP's virtual seminars for the fourth year in a row. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com. Now, on to our show.
You're listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk with Kat Shamapande.
Hey everyone, it's Kat Shamapande. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Let's Get Surety. We're going to be talking about a very important topic today. We're talking about the importance of outreach to small, emerging, and disadvantaged businesses. I've got Mark McCallum, CEO here at NASBP, on as my co-host. Hey Mark, thanks for being on.
Hey, Kat, we're back.
I know.
Great
This
topic.
it's a topic near and dear to your heart, Mark. I know.
Absolutely.
And to talk about this with us, we have our chair of NASBP's Small and Emerging Business Committee, Chris Downey of Downey and Company. Hey, Chris, thanks for being on.
Hi, Kat. Thank you for having me. And Mark, thank you.
Well, before we kind of dive into this topic, Chris, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Downey and Company?
Sure. I'm a surety bond agent, which is appropriate for this conversation. I'm located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My bond agency is Downey and Company, and we're really kind of a small, emerging contractor market in New Mexico, and so that's been historically our focus is the mom and pop businesses that are out there. And that's kind of led me from that being my background. That's led me to the Small and Emerging Business Committee, which is even more appropriate. And so that's kind of the basis of everything.
Yeah, I mean, we've had the pleasure of having you serve as chair of the Small and Emerging Business Committee. Can you tell us a little bit more about your committee? And if anyone might be interested in finding out more, they can always join.
We would, yes. We're always looking for members, and we're really focused on the small and emerging contractor, and so that's kind of a broad landscape when you think about the entire United States. But within that, we work very closely with the SBA. Office of Surety Guarantees, and that's been a really good opportunity for not only my committee but for the NASBP as a whole. And so part of those that relationship has led us to create a bunch of different programs, including some of the things like Bonding Across America, which unfortunately is not having live meetings right now, but we will pick that back up when this whole virus pandemic thing hopefully limits.
Yeah, Chris, what is Bonding Across America? Bonding
Across America was really an outreach program with the NASBP and the SBA Office of Surety Guarantees, where we would try to it was programs done throughout the United States. And we were, really just trying to outreach to the small and emerging contractors and to let them know that, the SBA does have a bond guarantee program that is a resource to some contractors that can't necessarily find surety bonding in the standard markets. And so, it was a great opportunity for us to work together on these things so that, the message came from one source and not from two different angles. And I think it was really, it was really effective.
Well, Chris, as part of that outreach effort, were there certain materials that were developed by the committee and further into those programs that are available to bond producers?
Certainly, yeah. No, we've got the bonding awareness toolkit, which is certainly still available despite not having live meetings. And yeah, that is available, and that is I'm not sure exactly where on the web.
Well, I can include the link in the description for the podcast, so anyone who's interested in finding out more or downloading those resources can go ahead and do that.
Yes.
It's we kind of hear this often, kind of being in the surety industry. But for those who may be unfamiliar, you kind of often hear someone say, "Well, how do I access surety? Is there somebody particularly that I need to go and meet and have a relationship? Why is it important then to conduct outreach to small, emerging, and disadvantaged contractors?" Do you think they're very familiar with surety to begin with?
I don't. I mean, really, the situation that I see most often as a bond agent is the small and emerging contractors don't necessarily understand where and how to get a surety bond, or they've been declined, and that's been a difficult thing, and nobody's really taken the time to hold their hand and walk them through the process, because it is a process. I mean, it's a very investigatory process.
Right.
That these companies go through, and it's very helpful to have a bond agent, which is typically the first place to start, to begin these conversations and to start gathering the information and material that's necessary for the underwriting process with the surety company.
Do you hear maybe some clients who have had false starts? Maybe they started with an insurance agent who really wasn't a bond agent. Do you find that to be true?
Oh, yeah, I certainly do. I mean, and when you talk about the whole general insurance world, bonding gets kind of shoved into that. And really, it's a super niche type of thing. And oftentimes what you'll find is that there's a million insurance agents out there, but they don't even understand the process themselves.
Right.
Therefore, they can't really properly coach somebody through it. And insurance is just a bit of a different product in general. Bonds aren't necessarily written with the idea that we're going to have some losses here and there. It's a whole other thing. It's not a volume type of product. Therefore, there's a lot of underwriting that's involved, and really, surety bond agents underwrite themselves.
Right.
Very much before the process even begins, and therefore, that's why that is the best place to start.
It seems like with small and disadvantaged businesses, you're going to have to do a lot of education. As you said, you're coaching them up and familiarizing themselves. What are some of the areas in particular that you see where they may not know what they're missing out or not doing that is a problem?
That's a really broad question, but a good one nonetheless. It's in the very nature. When you talk about small and emerging, it's incredibly difficult and very costly to start a construction company, and therefore, as you are in the process of doing that, you're constantly looking at cost, and a lot of times that's a little bit prohibitive to learning, because they're not necessarily apt to hire a CPA or hire an attorney. And these things are somewhat necessary to, enhance your bond program. But further, there's just a lot of lack of information out there. Oftentimes what I find is you get somebody that is really, really good, has a really good trade. Like, they really, really know what they're doing as far as hanging drywall or any of that is concerned. However, they don't necessarily understand the business aspects, and therefore haven't sat down to, scratch their head and think about, let's create a business plan here. What's going to happen in 3 years? What's going to happen in 5 years? What's going to happen in 10 years? And these are all just, very basic business steps, but they're really essential. And I think, when you have somebody that is opening up a business and they're essentially the jack of all trades. I mean, they're the laborer, they're the foreman, they're the person that's bidding the job. They're the accountant oftentimes, or a family member. They're really have too many things going on, that it's necessary to kind of sit down and walk through a process.
Right. And I imagine there are instances where somebody's doing residential or commercial work, hasn't needed to be bonded, and then wants to pursue public work. And then that's a whole nother level, and they may not be familiar with it. Where do they go
Correct.
to kind of gain that knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, and really that's the start, and that, a lot of it is dictated by the ability to get work. I mean, you need to achieve a certain degree of sophistication to move to kind of the next job size, or the next job, complicated job of that matter. And so when they bump their head up against it, that's when they start coming to the idea of, okay, well, what do I really need to do here? What is necessary?
Well, I know in just a little bit, we'll get into an educational effort that you were intimately involved with, a new resource. But one of the things that I find very intriguing is how do you shape the expectations of these businesses that come to you? So, I imagine there may be some that want to go from 0 to 100 miles per hour. How do you shape those expectations, keep them involved, and keep them moving in the right direction?
Sure. Well, I mean, a lot of that is really about capacity. I mean, do they have the experience to do an X dollar amount size job? Have they done it before? Have they done it under their own power? Have they done it working for somebody else? What have their employees experienced all of this? And really that, that's a lot of what shapes their ability to get the surety bonding. And a lot of these people, they're not babes in the woods as far as construction goes.
Right.
They've often had experience with other firms that have been able to, in some cases, pull, massive size surety capacity. At which point then they start their own business and they're like, well, why can't I just walk onto a $10 million job? And there's certainly there's reasons, which for the most part, when it's explained, they understand. They don't have the equipment base, they don't have the experience base, they don't have the number of people or laborers that they need. And those things are really what as a bond agent that I hone in on, particularly in our initial discussions, because oftentimes the first discussion is, hey, I just pulled the specs on this project and it looks like I'm going to need to post a bond. And I've always had difficulty getting bonds, or I've never been able to get the bonds. What do I need to do? And usually that's where we start. And sometimes the jobs that they're looking at are really, within the surety scope for them. And other times they're not, at which point, you've got to lower your expectations a little bit. You got to walk before you can run sometimes.
Right. So I imagine it would be helpful if there are resources out there to help frame those discussions, help you along the way with explaining different things and making them more knowledgeable so they can have better questions for you and respond in better ways. You were recently involved in an effort. It was a joint effort between NASBP and the Surety and Fidelity Association of America to come up with an online program. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that and why that was important to undertake?
Yeah, this program is I'm really excited about it. It was an effort between two organizations within the surety industry, and that kind of come at the industry from different angles. And I think it was fabulous that we could come together to put this program together. And really it's just a nice broad view of what it's going to take for these emerging contractors to get into the surety bonding. And the surety world has changed since I've been in it. And, hopefully I'm not that old. Hopefully I haven't been in it that long. But the years keep stacking up. And now we kind of have different ways of doing surety bonds. And so, recently, in recent years, small and emerging contractors have been able to get transactional bonds, is what we call them, but basically credit score approvals. And those have you limited up to a certain job size, which is fairly small in the scope of things. And, since that's come into our industry, it seems like there's been a bit of a gap of communication on, well, how do you make that leap from the transactional bonds to the full underwriting, surety that the large contractors use? And that's really something that this program addresses. Number one, it defines these things, but then it also addresses all of that. So it's good, and it's done in a different manner. For years we've tried a lot of different versions of education programs to get the information out to the people, and this one's a little more interactive. And I like the way that it's done. It's frankly kind of boring to read a whole bunch of surety information, and this spreads it out in a different way. It for the most part, it has 9 modules, and for the most part, the modules kind of present the idea of what is required by the surety, and then it kind of goes into like a self-reflection portion where you kind of analyze a little bit internally your business, and then it gives you examples, which is really, really helpful. We've never done that before, and I think that, for the most part, emerging contractors will be able to identify with these real life examples and say, oh, that was me, or, I see how this applies. And just to have that example there, I think makes it different, but makes it very understandable.
And you mentioned it's divided up into modules, and those modules are then separated into paths that the learner.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Correct.
So the learner can go through, or the small and emerging business can go through a path that makes no sense for them.
Yes, exactly. Because for the most part in our world, if you're only looking for bonds up to approximately 400,000, you can survive in the transactional surety world. Where all of your where your credit score is the basis for the approval of these surety bonds, and those tend to be a little bit more expensive than what you could probably find in the standard surety market, and you're limited by the capacity. And most of these companies are growing, and $400,000 is only going to sustain you for so long, and then you're going to go after bigger projects, at which point this does a really good job of walking you through here's what the transactional process is, but when you've met the capacity of that, this is what we're going to do. This is how you move into the regular surety realm.
Well, it sounds like not only is it great for somebody who's trying to learn about the surety bond process, but it actually could even benefit those who maybe have gone through a transactional or a credit-based process and then want to take the next step, maybe to get a traditional program going. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, and that honestly, both twofold, really. Yes, it is in the program, but I also find that as a bond agent, I find a lot of customers that are lost in that realm.
Okay.
So and in fact, I've got a really nice plumbing contractor here in New Mexico that I met a couple years ago. That is an 8A contractor, and they were having problems because they couldn't get a bond over $400,000, and they were just kind of scratching their heads. How do I get around this? And so it was one of those things that all they needed to do was find a CPA. That was all they needed. They had all the other pieces in place. They just didn't. Nobody told them to go get a CPA, and so instantly, within a matter of weeks, they were able to produce a financial statement that was compiled by a CPA, and they had a $2 million bond in their hand. And that changed the company. And here they are 2 years later. They're blowing, going. They've done really well through COVID, despite all the challenges. And it was that simple. And that again is part of the difference between a transactional bond versus our regular or standard surety.
Well, and it sounds like the ability to have someone provide guidance, the ability to ask questions and get answers is critically important.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. And I think that really helped these folks.
Does this online program have a component like that that's part of the overall? Okay.
Yes, very much so. Yes. And it walks, it walks you through it, which is really, really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's on, I mean, Mark, you mentioned it's online, which seems like, the way, Chris, you've kind of described the group of small and emerging and disadvantaged business owners, they've got a lot going on. They don't have a lot of extra time in the day. So being able to access these courses, on demand in a way, time and in a way like on a phone or tablet that works for them is probably a huge advantage versus, trying to travel and go to an in-person training.
Well, and I'll be completely honest with you. I went through the program. I feel very much like a contractor would go through the program, because obviously I was involved in all of the groundwork and the discussion with subject matter experts and all of that. But I really wasn't involved in the creation of the program, the formatting, I should say. And what I thought was absolutely brilliant about the program was it took me about 2 weeks to get through the whole thing. Where I stopped, I could go back. I would go right back to where I stopped, and I would be able to pick it up and continue on. And what's fabulous about it is you can always go back. And even further, there's a little resources tab on the left side of the screen that, as you're going through this module, there's things that are there in the resource tab that are almost like takeaways, or leave behinds in my case, that, they can always access little PDF files that are just a wealth of information to print off and have. And that's very valuable stuff. And again, that's just, we've done this differently, and that's one of the elements that you'll see.
Yeah, that accessibility just seems like a huge advantage, but the program has even more than that on-demand component. So there's the education piece, and then there's also the mentoring component that contractors can opt into at the end if they're interested in continuing that conversation to get some more guidance, kind of like what you had said earlier, what people really need, to be walked through.
Exactly. And I don't know. I mean, I kind of see, I'm the same way, I can read stuff online all day, but I'm going to have questions. I'm going to, even if I call somebody just to regurgitate what I read, it's helpful because it's reinforcing. And so you are right, Kat, that mentoring aspect is really, it's a helping hand. And I really encourage and hope that, emerging contractors that do come across this program are able to click that mentoring button and use it.
So for those that do, they're going to be paired with an NASBP bond producer and then also a surety company underwriter to give them perspectives that will help them.
Yes, exactly. And that's going to be truly valuable. And it's right there for you. You don't have to do anything. You just have to say yes. And there's protocols within the mentoring program. So these folks will be getting back to you in a set amount of time. It's not like this is just going to go on forever. They're going to jump right on it and be there available for whatever questions that you have. And, hopefully that, you will be able to, you'll be assigned a producer that you could potentially work with, and if not, there's always the NASBP website, which can hook you up with a producer in your area.
Right. Well, I know that at least for me, it's not enough to read the book. As you said, I might have specific questions that pertain to my situation. Sure. And so this kind of contextualizes it. It makes surety more specific to their circumstances.
It does. And even, within the program, they have varying, contractor participants, I guess. We have 3 examples of contractors that have had different things that happened in their business, and those are going to be really helpful, examples. At which point, I would pick up on the one guy that had a bankruptcy, and he's able to talk about it and how he overcame it. But all bankruptcies are so incredibly different, and people have varying degrees. Obviously, this guy doesn't go into his particular circumstance, but I could see a situation where the light bulb goes on for somebody because they're like, hey, you know what? I've had a bankruptcy too. You mean I can really still get bonds? Click the mentoring button, then talk to them. They talk about your personal situation.
Well, that's great, because it seems like this online resource also kind of dispels maybe misconceptions about the surety process, which I think is valuable for anybody to realize that, if they put the effort in and position themselves right, that they can earn that surety credit. So that's exciting.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good stuff.
It also sounds like maybe the Small and Emerging Business Committee might become a resource for those who want to volunteer to be mentors. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. Yes. If you get in touch with us in the Small and Emerging Committee, we can get you connected.
That's fabulous. That's great.
Which I would recommend for anybody, really. I mean, it's a good opportunity, both producers and company folks.
Wow, that is terrific. Well, this is an exciting development. Again, being spearheaded by your leadership in the Small and Emerging Business Committee, and it's.
It was a full-on NASBP effort. I mean, we had participants across the board, not just my committee.
But I think Professional Development Committee was engaged as well.
Yes, very much so.
That is great. Well, it's just one of the many resources that have been developed, and I know that are available either from the NASBP website or learning management site. And we'll continue to grow that out, I imagine.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a great first step. It really is, and it's new. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can just continue to read, but this is interactive.
Yeah, interactive is great. It's sometimes easier to listen to someone talk about something than to have to read through it yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I will make sure we include a link to the contractor bonding education and mentoring program in the description for this podcast. Please. If anyone wants to go check that out.
It's my understanding that is available. Is it available now?
It's available now. Yep. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
So it was great having you on with us, Chris. Hopefully you can join us again and talk about some more issues in the surety industry.
Please, thank you. It was really an honor to be here today. Thank you.
You've been listening to Let's Get Surety, brought to you by the National Association of Surety Bond Producers. For more information about the NASBP and its members, visit nasbp.org.
Before we go, we just wanted to say thank you again to Old Republic Surety for their generous support in sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com.